Today I would like to explain a little bit about the startup visa, about what this process entails. Typically this is a two-step process. The first stage, what we have to get is a approval letter or a commitment letter from a designated institution. There is a list of designated institutions that are assigned by the Canadian government, and only those institutions are able to provide the commitment letter. They are divided into three different categories. One, it would be angel investors. One is an incubator, and the third one is venture capitalist. So each of these has different requirements in order for the project to be qualified. For example, as an angel investor, you would be receiving a fund of $75,000 from these companies to be able to start your project here in Canada. Typically, incubators help you set up the business here in Canada, help you with setup, establishing your ideas. So that's what their expertise is. Again, the first stage is to get an approval from one of these designated institutions. After the approval letter is issued, then as a candidate, there is various options. The first option is that you can actually have five additional members to be included in this application. One thing to be realized is, if you're doing this as a group, you have to ensure that every single person qualifies to immigrate to Canada. Because if one of them basically is not approved, the entire group is actually disqualified from getting permanent residency. When the approval letter comes, the steps are to apply for a work permit. Typically, if it's a single person, you would get a closed work permit based on the company. If you have accompanying family members, such as your spouse, your children, the spouse could get an open work permit, and the children could get study permits to enter Canada. At the same time, you also will have to apply for the permanent residency. Now, typically, back in the days, the permanent residency process would be wrapped up within 6 months, 7 months, but due to current delays, we are looking at about a 3-year time frame to get these applications finalized, probably even longer. And in most cases, actually in all cases that we have had recently, the candidates have arrived here on work permits. They have started working on the projects, and while they're doing the work to establish these projects, the permanent residency is basically going through the queues to get processed. It is very important to note that because you get a work permit specific for your project, you need to actually be in Canada. Anywhere along the time frames for your permanent residency, the Canadian government could ask for additional documents regarding the process. They could ask you to provide documents about the company, how far your project has come, what have you established, have you hired Canadians, permanent residents. So those are all stages that you would actually have to be prepared. Make sure that you have all the necessary documents, and we have seen that from experience, that if you are not here in Canada, if you're not having the work permit, where the permanent residency application can be actually non-compliant, and they can actually refuse it because you're not actually doing what you had told the Canadian government you were going to do. So we are, with our clients, we always help people to get the work permits, come to Canada, establish the business, work on their projects until the PR arrives. It's very, very important. What is also required, some of the other minimum requirements for this program, typically you don't need to have an experience, like work experience. It's based on the idea and whether this is going to get approved by the designated institution. However, you do need minimum language requirements as a primary applicant, which is a CLB 5 level in the IELTS General or CELPIP General. In addition, you also have to have a proof of funds. that you can support your family while you're in Canada, and that depends on the family size actually. So if it's one person, it's going to be a certain amount. If it's two people, it's going to be a certain amount. So that depends on your family composition. That is basically an overall overview of the startup application.